All right, welcome to the Wet, Wild, and Warpy stream again. We are here with Josh Shiben, who crushed it at the Your Hobby Place GT, went 5-0, as all good first placers should. So I got some questions for you, and if you're willing, maybe we'll get some answers.
Awesome. Let's do it.
So first off, how long have you been playing? What armies do you play? And what got you into 40K to start with?
I put a toe in when I was back in high school. I got a bunch of Black Templars for cheap. This was like second or third edition, and the Armageddon Codex thing had just come out, and they could do like all the oaths and stuff, and so they were really cool. And so that was, and then I was in high school, so I didn't have any money.
I
Couldn't feed
still
the
don't have any
chicken.
money.
Went to college, had even less money, and then graduated, got a job, got back into it because I guess I have an addictive personality. And so for a little while, I just kind of built like Black Templary stuff. I have a Land Raider Crusader, that kind of stuff. And then seventh edition, I dabbled a little bit in Harlequins and Drakari, like just a little bit, just enough to have a couple raiders. And then the Scutari Codex came out, um, and I was like, holy crap, that's what I need to run. So dumped everything and dove into Skitarii. At the time, I was trying to just run Skitarii. This is before Cult Mechanicus and Skitarii had made a beautiful AdMech baby. And so I've been running Skitarii and then AdMech once 8th edition came around, since it's been a thing.
All
So
right.
I've also got some knights. Um, that's pretty much it.
All right. So, uh, going into this tournament, the GT, uh, I'm sure you tested this list before. How did you think you were gonna place? Did you expect to go 5-0, 4-1, 3-2? Where did you feel like you were gonna fall coming into it?
So I'd run a really similar list to this at the Richmond GT about a month ago. And that I went 5-0 at and took second. So I was really hoping to go at least 4-1 at this, given how good AdMech is. Like, man, if I go 3-2, I'll really suck. So I'm hoping for 4-1. I thought that was definitely attainable. 5-0s feels real good. So exceeded expectations, but look,
Good. So, before we start really diving into your list, is there anything when you step up to the table that you're like, man, I hope my opponent isn't running this army, or I hope I don't see this across the table from me?
um, right now it's probably mostly AdMech, because there's something that has like other AdMech armies have the capacity to just do exactly what you're trying to do
Yep.
and beat you at your own game, especially if they like get first turn or something. Um, so that's always a huge risk. Um, and also, whenever I run into an army that has the capacity to really pressure you across the table in multiple locations at the same time, um, really get on top of you quickly, that can really make you sweat. And stuff that can threaten the last chickens. So things like Redemptor Dreads, they're that flat 3 damage. Plasma Cannon can really blow those things apart. So you need to make sure you hit those before they can hit you. Um,
Prioritize, prioritize
yeah,
what kills you first, right?
yeah. So I mean, it depends on the table and the layout, but if you can't hide all your chickens and there's like some stuff that can bust them pretty easily, you could have a bad day.
Yep.
So that's stuff you always got to watch out for too.
All right. Um. So, before we break into the list, are there any combos that you didn't fit into this list that you wanted to, but that just didn't fit?
So I've experimented with the Cerberus Raiders. I like them a lot. Um, they didn't make it in the list I ran down in Richmond. I was also had instead of 2 units of 3 last chickens, I had autocannons in there as well.
Okay.
And I really liked them, especially for the Lucius matchup because they're 2 damage and they have AP and a lot of shots they can spray. Um, but they just, after they lost the core keyword and um, some of the other stuff they lost, they didn't quite make the cut. Um,
Because rerolls matter.
yeah, well, it's more the loss of the core keyword. Because like prior to that, I was like, well, you can get them up to strength 8 if you need to, so that'll help with Orky Ramshackle stuff, and you can just do a lot of stuff with them
Right.
that the autocannons really needed to be effective. And so when they lost core and all those potential buffs, it was like, man, not really worth it anymore.
Did I give you
So,
the Did I give you the opportunity to do any shoutouts before we start digging into this list?
um, yeah, so sure. Shout outs to the rest of the Oh Hi Mars team. That's just 2 other players. um, but yeah, that's about it.
All
And
right.
to your hobby place for running a great tournament.
Yeah, it was good. I had a lot of really good games there.
Yeah.
A lot of really good opponents. I really not I wasn't seeing a lot of salt at the table, which is nice.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, I had pretty much all my games were really enjoyable.
yeah.
So I yeah, it's good top to bottom.
So let's start digging into this thing because um I want to know. As somebody who has to play AdMech, I want to know what I'm going into. So Forge World Mars.
Yep.
First off, that's the first choice that really you run into. It's either Mars or Lucius.
Yeah, Mars or Lucius, and I've been running Mars since the Codex dropped. I know Lucius has it's a little tougher. It's got the deep strike thing that's really cool, but for me, it's like almost impossible to say no to Wrath of Mars. So that's one of the big reasons I'm running Mars is because you can just for 1 CP you can turn an entire 20-man unit of any of your Scutari into just like they'll just drop 6 mortal wounds on something.
No,
And
thank
so
you.
that just I mean it's so effective
Yeah,
against that's half a tank
yeah.
for
It's
1
effective
CP.
against everything. Um,
Yeah.
Six mortal wounds is
Anything
effective against everything.
yeah, anything you need to kill. Oh, that's invulnerable what is it? The big bird thing with the 3 up bimbo.
Yeah, the Lord
Six
of Change.
yeah, Lord of Change. That's like not quite half his wounds, like
Yeah,
just the mortal wounds, and
yeah.
then they saw the other damage. So that was a big reason I took Mars, and then the Canticles are just such a great army buff multiplier for Skitarii. It adds so much flexibility to your list because it just gets you out of jams, right? If you need cover, you got Shroud Psalm. If you want to go punch a tank, for instance, in one game, I ran into a Telemon Dreadnought, not at the last tournament, but in the past. I run into a Telemon Dreadnought. You just take the +1 strength, and then for 1 CP, your Sicarans can come in at strength 8, and they can punch a Telemon Dreadnought, uh, not death, but do a lot of damage to them. Um, you need to get somewhere really far. Well, okay, I've got a Canticle that gives me an extra D6 on advance and charge rolls. So that one's great for like finishing blows on your enemy. You've got the shooty one that makes everything shoot better. It's just such a good force multiplier.
Right. It's like
The,
having
the
power from pain. It's just
I, I mean maybe even better because I get to pick exactly what I want when I want it.
no.
So
It's better. It's like
yeah,
that.
I'll give an example. The first game I ran into Drakari, and so the first and he got first turn.
Yep.
So first turn I popped the -1 to hit in close combat and +1 to my save, and he just came in and bounced off me.
Yep.
Um, and it's just great. Like
And it's
I
bad for
don't know,
Drukari when they bounce off something.
yeah, because then they bounce off you, and then you just like stick a taser gun
Right.
right in them, and
And they're
that
dead.
that's it. You're
Yeah,
right back
they're like, oh well, I guess I shouldn't have done that.
Yeah,
Uh,
but I get to pick exactly what I want to do, and
right.
so if he had seen that I put the -1 to hit and stayed back a turn, it's like, all right, well now I'm just going to shoot you.
Do you
So
so is that a choose it once and you can't choose it again, or you choose it as often as you want, or
Yeah, it's choose it once and you can't choose it again. But it's really nice because, AdMech Scutari have the Doctrina bonuses. Are you
Right.
familiar with those?
I'm not.
Okay, so the Doctrina, you can like turn up your ballistic skill and down, and it hurts your weapon skill.
Right.
Or
Okay.
turn up your weapon skill and hurts your ballistic skill, or turn up your save and hurt your speed, or turn up your speed and hurt your save. And so you can layer those with your canticles to really make your army extremely tough. Like you could do +1 save and cover the first turn, or
Yeah.
+1 save, -1 hit in melee if you're fighting Drakari, and really double down on defensive capabilities.
Yep.
You can double down on offensive capabilities, or you can kind of mix and match, right? You can do +1 to your save and better shooting. So it's just a tremendous amount of flexibility that Mars gives, especially.
Yeah.
So,
Well, I know a lot of times in a lot of my games it comes down to a turn, right? Generally
mhm.
like turn 3 or turn 2, somewhere in there, um, the game gets decided.
Yeah.
And you start to find out whether is it a rout or did you just get demolished, right?
Mhm.
So if you can stack those buffs when you need them on who you need them on, that's
Yeah.
I mean easily swings the game, right?
Right. And it's kind of like the Necron protocols, and then it helps your whole army, except you don't have to assign them before the game even starts. You get to use them when you need them.
You get to just be all willy-nilly with it.
Yeah, fast and loose. It's great.
All right. So then you spent 4 pre-game strats at
Yes.
least.
Yep.
So the first one is Architect Specialist. Who's that on, or what does it do?
So can I just kind of lump them all together a little
Yeah,
bit?
go ahead.
Yeah. Okay. So what really drives these big Skitarii hordes are a lot of the buffs and relics and stuff that you can get on multiple units. So the Archaeotech Specialist is spent to get the Raiment of the Tech Martyr, and that's a relic that you stick on the Tech Priest Manipulus.
Okay.
And what that does is it allows a unit to ignore all penalties to hit.
Okay.
And that's important because your Skitarii Rangers are heavy weapons. So he can hang out near Skitarii Ranger Squad. He can buff them with his innate ability, and he can let them ignore penalties to hit.
Right.
But it doesn't just ignore penalties to hit, it ignores, or it doesn't just let them move and shoot their heavy
Right.
weapons. It lets them, shoot through forests or shoot at bombers or whatever you want.
Yep.
So that's the first one. Um, the the relic that you come standard with is the Exemplar's Eternity. That's a reroll aura on the Marshal.
Right.
And then I buy an extra relic. It's the Tempercopia, and
Okay.
that's one that you can put on a squad. I guess. Do you want to talk about that now, or get to it when we get to the
Uh,
squad?
we can get to when we get to the squad.
Okay. Yeah, and
Um.
then there's an extra Warlord trait for one of the Skitarii squads, and an
Okay.
extra Warlord trait for one of the Skitarii Marshals.
Okay. Um.
So like there's the whole point is that you have 3 Skitarii buffs that you can get wherever you need, and you have lots of different you have a lot of flexibility with where you can get those and who you can get them to,
Right.
so that they can get to the squad that needs it most.
Makes sense. So, moving down, uh, you have something in your no force org slot, which not a lot of armies have. A Brotherhood of the Cog for 80 points. The Artisans. So what's that doing for you?
So that unit is a Techno Archaeologist, and the way AdMech works is if you have a Dominus, a Tech Priest Dominus or a Tech Priest Manipulus, you could take one extra either Agency or Techno Archaeologist, like one of the lesser um, uh,
HQs.
tech, one of the lesser Tech Priests
Okay.
can like join your army for no force org charts. And so this is nice because it lets you pack in a fourth commander, um, HQ slot and one battalion. And I used it to be able to get a second tech priest because AdMech have these holy order traits that you can upgrade your tech priests with.
Okay.
And I really wanted 2 of them, and I also really wanted 2 marshals. So this was a way to get a second one in there.
Right.
It also, the Techno Archaeologist is kind of a neat unit because he lets a infantry unit perform an action and still shoot, which is really great when you are taking like Race of Banners or something.
Yep.
And he has a 12-inch deep strike aura that he pushes out, so he can kind of babysit an objective on his own in some games.
Yep.
Mid to late game when you've penetrated a lot and you just need somebody to sit there. He doesn't have to worry about deep strikers coming in, charging him, killing, stealing the objective from you.
Yep.
And he can do repairs and all that kind of stuff. So he's just a nice little unit. I think he typically comes in at 60 points, and then I spent 20 points to upgrade him.
Yep.
The upgrade I gave him was the Artisans. And so what the Artisans do is they let a unit fall back and shoot at -1 to hit and or charge. And then you can spend an action to upgrade him into the advanced version of the Artisans. And what that does is he gives a unit +1 strength on the ranged attacks. So that's a really nice flexible unit. If you're playing somebody like Drakari, you're gonna keep them in the first setting so that they can fall back and still do stuff. And if you run into someone like, I don't know, maybe orcs who have a lot of T5 units, or you're playing an enemy like, let's say they have a lot of T8 like knights, you're going to upgrade it so then you can get your Skitarii Rangers up to strength 5 and then be wounding them on 5s. So it's just a really nice flexible chess piece that, again, helps you dish out those buffs and helps you keep your army fully functional even when you're performing actions and stuff.
Perfect wording. Fully functional. Stinky robots.
How they do it.
All right. So moving into the HQ slot, which you've already touched on a little bit, you have 2 marshals, one of which is your warlord, and then the other you gave a warlord trait.
Yes.
Are these?
So
Go ahead.
Yeah. So I took the 2 marshals because I'm really reliant on these Skitarii. The whole army Skitarii except for those 2 tech priests and a servitor squad. And so the Marshal has a really neat ability that he can make a Skitarii unit ignore its penalty for those Skitarii buffs. They have the buff and the minus that are paired together. He can make a Skitarii unit ignore that penalty. So that's really nice when you have a bunch of units that are kind of specialists, like your Sicarans, for instance. You buff the whole army's ballistic skill, but you're like, well, that guy, they might still need to fight, so we'll keep their weapon skill where it is. Okay. Or it's even more important when you buff everybody's armor, but it hurts their speed. And you're like, but I still need this unit to go grab an objective or to get around this corner to get a shot or whatever.
Right.
So the Marshal's just like, you keep doing your thing and don't be degraded. So
you're able to do that twice.
Yeah, so having 2 Marshals really lets you spread that around. It's also useful because they have a reroll 1's wound aura, and so with 2 Marshals, you can have a big blob of Rangers over here and a big blob over there, and they can kind of gives you a little bit of capability to operate independently.
Yep. And rerolls are always good.
Yeah, exactly. The Warlord, the relic he takes lets you reroll 1s to hit as well, so that's just awesome. It's a great relic. He's like a 45, 55 point model, and he's rerolling all 1s to hit and wound in an army like Admech where you're throwing 60 dice. That's a lot of rerolls, and so he absolutely pays for himself. And then on top of that, he lets you ignore those deprecations, and then you give him a Warlord trait. So my Warlord can give a unit cover, and if the unit is in a terrain feature, it gets an additional +1 to its save. So that's really cool and handy. Even though you have Shrouds on that can give the whole army cover, you can still, it's never going to hurt to pass that out. Yeah. And then the other guy has a fall back and shoot. So that's 2 units in your army that can fall back and shoot. One with the Marshal and one with the Techno Archaeologist, and that really gives you a lot of flexibility against something like Drakari.
Especially when you're pumping out the number of shots that those Rangers pump out. It's just, please don't run away from me, please.
Yeah, you had really better lock them in combat somehow with like witches or Black Templars or something like that.
I mean, even if you wrap them, you can still use the strat to just walk
get
away.
Out and let the rest of the army just train guns on them.
Yeah. All right, so then you have the Tech Priest Manipulus. which
Hmm.
also has a relic.
Yes. So we
Um,
already talked about his relic. It lets a unit ignore penalties to hit.
yep.
It also gives them feel no pain, which rarely, if ever, comes up. Um, and then the Manipulus also has a buff that he can give out to any of the core Skitarii squads, the Rangers or the Vanguard, and it gives them a +6 inch range and an extra AP. So you can get the Rangers up to 36 inches at AP2, or you can get the Vanguard squad up to 24 inches AP1. Um, it's really effective. It's really helpful in either one of them. You just and the fact that you could do it on either really lets you adapt to what your opponent's doing. If your opponent has a lot of invo saves and stuff, probably better to do it on the Vanguard. Or if there's like lots of monsters or big uglies, do it on the Vanguard. And if you have to reach out and bust tanks, instead you make sure he's buffing Rangers.
Flexibility and options is what we want.
Yeah,
Flexibility and options.
yeah.
Um,
And I also took he's the second tech priest, so he's upgraded as well. He I only ever use the base ability. He's artisans, I think. Logi. We already did the artisans. He's a
yep.
Logi. And so he lets a unit ignore AP1 and 2. So he's just like, hey, that's Guitar Squad there, ignoring AP1 and 2.
Yeah,
And so you can
that's
you can
not
put that,
annoying.
yeah, right. So you can put that buff on top of all the other little buffs that you can put on them, and now it's a 20-man Skitarii squad that you're just not going to move,
No.
and it's going to jump out, grab an objective, and not leave that
Right.
objective all game.
And then be more durable than Necrons.
Yep. Good luck.
Because we weren't annoyed already.
Yeah. And then if I am really worried about it, I'll buff their save another one.
Yeah.
Like, just cause.
So and then we come to what at least I've come to see is kind of a staple of a lot of ad mech lists. And is this because of points or is it because of effectiveness? Is it a little bit of both? The Skitarii Rangers and big blobs of them.
Yeah, so from my perspective, I mean it is nice that they're only 8 points, and for 8 points they do a lot of work,
Yep.
right? Um, Strength 4, heavy 2 gun that's 30-inch range, lets them outrange most basic infantry. It comes stock with AP1. You can easily get them up to AP2. They're a great platform for Wrath of Mars, right? Because it's just boom, 6 mortals almost any time. For 2 CP, you can give them 50% more shots. I mean, it's just a great, reliable unit that you can move around in mass. And I give both of my units the data tether, so you can pass buffs all around. The data tether basically removes the range requirements on the Skitarii Marshal Warlord traits.
Ah,
So you can get those Skitarii Marshal buffs wherever you need them. You can ignore the penalties wherever you need them, and they're just great units.
yeah. No, I mean, so for 8 points, you can get a Cabaret Warrior,
Or
or
or you could get a
you
much
could
better
right, you could
model.
get a Skitarii Ranger. I'd like to trade, please.
Yeah, I think most of 40K, except for maybe orcs coming up soon, would trade whatever they got
Yep.
for a Skitard Ranger. He's
Yep.
awesome.
Yeah. Um. So, uh, let's see. Then we have the Vanguards, who also
Hmm.
have a data tether. So they
Yes.
still benefit from that. I get my orders from anywhere
Hmm.
because I know how to carry a radio.
Yes, and so I went with 2 units of Rangers and 1 unit of Vanguard. And the reason for that is I felt like the Rangers are one, you can sit back more and spray shots downfield with them, whereas the Vanguards really need pushing forward. Um, and two, I felt like there are more situations where the Vanguard just don't really do that much for you. If you're playing like a tank heavy skew list, your Vanguard just kind of stink at that. Whereas the Rangers, they're pretty much good in any conflict. So if I had to take two of one and one of another, I did that. The Vanguard are still they. I don't want to dump on them because they
Right.
still kick a little butt. Um, I mean
Yeah.
they got the auto wound stratagem, so they can Bellacor's around. They're like, here's 10 wounds, uh, which is just crazy. Uh,
-1 to
Fox,
wound. Don't care.
don't care. I wound you on 5 hit.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, not a great Wrath of Mars unit though.
No.
You'd think they would be because they fire a lot of shots, but because they auto wound stuff, you're not getting that wound roll.
Right.
So that's another reason I wanted to run the 2 Ranger blobs. That you can't really thin out. You can, but it's really hard to thin out this army as all of its Wrath of Mars options
Right.
quickly. So I wanted to be able to use that turn 2, turn 3, turn 4, late into the game to really just keep dumping mortal wounds on top of you and picking up your core key units every
So,
single turn.
from what I'm hearing, generally, in your games, are your vanguards kind of applying pressure all game as much as they can, or
Yeah,
generally anyway?
well, it depends on the enemy. If I'm running into like a Chaos Demons list, I'm actually going to try and safeguard those guys a little bit because they're so devastating against like Tyranids or something that relies on a lot of big monsters.
Yep.
They just shred. But in a game where like I'm playing another AdMech or I'm playing Drakari or something, yeah, oftentimes the Vanguard will kind of push forward. They'll dare you to charge them because they Overwatch really well. Every Overwatch hit is a wound.
Yeah.
So a squad of 20 of these guys will pump out 10 wounds on a target. They also debuff your toughness and strength, so they're pretty good in once they get stuck in a little bit. So yeah, they'll kind of go forward and try and squat on a center objective or something. Um, Whereas
Eh,
the Rangers are perfectly happy sitting back on your home objective and just
I mean, with
killing stuff
30-inch range, how could they not be happy sitting in the back?
Yeah, great at it.
Um, all right. So then we have your elites, and you start with four servers.
Yeah. So when I played down in Richmond, I kept feeling like I had to leave a Ranger blob back on home objectives, and a lot of games I felt like that kind of took that Ranger blob out of the game a little
Right.
bit, um, which is a lot when you're only running three big
Right.
infantry squads. So the servitors I just kind of tacked in there. As long as your opponent doesn't have any line of sight ignoring stuff, the servitors can just camp on an objective all game.
Yep.
They can raise a banner, they can retrieve Octarius data, they can do whatever, and just
Yep.
just squat there.
Yeah.
Um,
I know. And in my list, and in a lot of lists I see, you generally have like somebody whose sole job is like, hey, like hide
just
and
yeah, just
stand
sit in this
here.
building.
Yeah. Like your job is it's an important one.
Yeah, but I don't want to spend a lot to do it because any idiot can do it.
Right. If I can do it cheaply, I'll be happier.
Yeah, so they're like 20 some point. They're less than 30 points, and they
Yeah.
just sit in the back.
Um. So then we have two units of Sakaran infiltrators. It looks like a unit 10 and a unit 5.
Yeah, so the unit of 10, these guys are awesome. They all have the taser goads and the pistols. So that means that the unit of 10 has 50 shots, making it another viable Wrath of Mars unit. They can forward deploy. So if you get the first turn, they can be right on your opponent's face because they have an 8-inch move. And for 1 CP, you can give them an extra attack, and for 1 CP, you can make all of their tasers explode on 5 ups instead of 6 ups. And so they'll just come in and obliterate stuff. On top of that, we gave them a relic with one of those pregame strats called the Tempercopia. And what that does is the sergeant, anyone who starts a fight phase within 3 inches of every fight phase, he can pick one unit that's within 3 inches of them, and that unit fights last.
Oh, yeah.
So yeah, right.
It's the Vexter
So
mask.
yeah, on an infantry squad that forward deploys.
Yeah.
So these guys kind of sit somewhere closer to your line, in cover, where you out of line of sight, where you can't see them, so you can't shoot them.
Yep.
Sergeant sits such that no matter where you charge him, you're within
You're
3
within
inches
3.
of
Mm-hmm.
him. And go ahead, charge him. I dare you. So that's what happens. People charge these guys, and then they're like, you're fighting last, and then they go crazy and they just kill stuff. And if you get the first turn, then they're right on top of your opponent. Turn 1, just obliterating chaff, killing whatever they want. I mean, you can amp them up to strength 8 if you want for 1 CP and with the right canticles.
They're just something you can't ignore.
They're game wreckers.
Yeah.
Um, And then the other squad, um, actually, it's only a little squad of 5, and they're more of like a Retrieve Octarius kind of unit because all of those Sicarans you can pull off the table if they were near a table edge, and
Mm-hmm.
then they pop up on another table edge the next turn. So those guys are great for you. You sit them way out on an objective somewhere. Maybe they retrieve Octarius data turn 2 or 3, disappear, show up in your opponent's backfield, retrieve Octarius data again. They're just kind of a utility unit.
Yep.
I actually gave them the power swords, the power sword and 3-shot
Uh,
pistol, and the taser goods and five
yep.
shot pistol, just in case I ran into someone who's ignoring a lot of AP. But they're usually not really there for fighting. They're there
Right.
for utility purposes. Whereas the 10-man squad is there to break stuff and give people bad days.
They're there to score you 8 in-game points with scramblers.
Octarian, yeah.
I'll keep calling them scramblers. I don't care. Anybody that tells me it's not scramblers is mean. All right. So moving on, we move to the Rust Stalkers,
Yes. So
who
these guys are
sound scary.
absolute nightmares in melee. They they all basically have power swords, so they're coming in at strength 5 base, which with the Canticle goes up to strength 6 base, or for 1 CP you can get it up even to strength 7. They're also Sicarans, so for 1 CP they can all get an extra attack, but they come with 3 stock. Um, and on 6s to wound, they cause mortals. And so this unit is totally capable of just basically taking down just about anything that your opponent can throw at you. And so, depending on the matchup, they'll either sit kind of in my line somewhere as a counter charge unit.
Yep.
So you come in and try and tie up some Skitarii or whatever, and they'll just come out and erase. You know, they don't care if it's a character with a great Imbo save. They don't care anything really because of
Right.
all the mortals. And they also have neat abilities, a lot of neat abilities stacked into them. They ignore any penalties to their charge roll or movement, so they can move through force or whatever at ease.
Can't
And
get
whenever they,
tangle-footed.
yeah, can't get tangle-footed. Whenever they are in a terrain feature, they also get +1 to their save. So this is a really neat unit. You can put, if you remember that Warlord trait, you can put that on top of them. The telemetry something or other. It gives them cover, but then if they're in a thing, they get if they're in a terrain feature, they get +1 to their save. So these guys, you run them forward and you stick them in the forest in the middle. They're not losing any movement or anything.
Right.
They're sitting in the middle of the table, and they have a 4-up save normally, +1 because of their innate ability. They're in a
Yep.
terrain feature. Another +1 because they have the Warlord trait. You know, they've been buffed with that Warlord trait.
Yep.
And then they also have cover. So they're sitting there with a 1-up save, -1 to hit in the terrain feature with 2 wound models. And
Annoying to remove. That's what they
they're,
are. They're annoying.
they're impossible to remove. And then they're sitting right in the middle of the table. And the next turn, you can take the Canticle that gives them, roll 3d6 and pick the 2 highest for your charges. And they can really get anywhere on the table and just kill stuff.
Yep.
So it's just a really awesome unit, and whether you're using it conservatively, like in your lines as a countercharger, or aggressively like that, it just gives your army another dimension. Because people see AdMech and they think, oh, they're just going to try and shoot me, but like these guys can really get in there and just tear apart whatever your elite unit is that's hiding somewhere,
So
and just
far,
yeah.
we've gone something that's hard to kill, something that's hard to kill, something that's hard to kill,
Mm-hmm.
backline unit, something that's hard to kill, something that's hard to kill.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, they're all squishy, right? Everything's T3. All the Sicarans only have a 4-up, 5-up imbo. So if you can catch them, and the buffs can't be on everybody everywhere at all times.
Right.
So if you can hit the right soft spots, you can definitely kill stuff and put a lot of damage on this army.
If you have the speed to charge what you want when you want,
Right.
nobody's safe.
I can even crank up that speed, right? Like I can degrade my
Right.
saves and add 3 inches to their speed. Now all of a sudden these guys have an 11-inch speed,
Yep.
and I can throw on top of that the Canticles that'll give them 3d6, pick the 2 highest charges. So now you're making like at least a 9-inch charge pretty
Yeah.
reliably. So that's, and you're coming from the center of the table. You can get wherever
You
you
can get
want.
anywhere. You can get anywhere
Yeah.
from the center of the table.
hmm
Uh,
So that's really that's kind of the idea of this army, is that it's a lot of like pieces, and each one of them is really capable of ruining your day, right? Even
mhm.
the 20-man ranger blob. And I don't really care if you pick up one unit or another unit, because something else will fill in the gap.
Right.
And the effort it takes for you to pick up that unit that I'm trading for you, um, is way more than that
Right.
unit's appointed.
You should
Or,
win. You should win the trade. Right.
yeah, yeah. AdMech trades really well,
Right.
um, and it offers you units, and you're like, oh, well, that one's deadly. I better shoot that.
Right.
And you do, but it's kind of forcing you out and forcing you to get these lines of sight on these units,
Yeah.
or it's drawing out your charge units, and then it'll come in with the second wave,
So what you're saying is I need to have one more wave than you have.
which is really hard to do because AdMech's underpointed.
Right.
It's just underposted across the line right
Which
now.
um if uh if the last codex was any indication, will never change. So there's that.
Yeah, well, I mean, orcs will be undercosted, and then I
Yeah.
don't know what Stiller cults will be
Uh,
undercosted, and we'll just
Tyranids will be undercosted. I can't wait for that.
and then they'll have to have the cost of Marines and release Marines
Again,
3.0. Yeah,
is it 3.0 at this point, or are we at 5.0 yet?
depends how you count. Yeah.
All right. So moving forward, we have some Iron Strider. I'm not even gonna try to say that word.
Alastari.
Yeah, that one.
Yeah. So this was the unit back before the nerf. These guys were absolutely insane because they had the core keyword, so they could get all these buffs that I'm talking about giving to my Scutari. I'd give them these chickens,
Right.
and people just could not kill them. I had a friend who was just spraying them with multiple Telemon and Caladius and stuff, and they're just shrugging it off.
Yeah.
So good that they pulled core from these units because they were kind of crazy. But prior to this, I was running units of two las cannon and two autocannon in the same unit, and I cut the autocannon to add a third las cannon, because the loss of core lost them a lot of rerolls and that kind of stuff. They just
Yeah.
generally became less efficient. So now they're units of three, which is actually really nice in a Martian detachment because Mars gets a free hit reroll every time a unit shoots. So if you have a unit of three of them and you crank your ballistic skill to a 5-up, statistically you're probably missing one shot because they're two las cannons each.
Right.
So you're re-rolling
Well,
on average.
ballistic skill to a 2-up.
Yeah,
Okay.
they have a 3-up normally, and
Yeah.
so Admech can up its ballistic skill and hurt its
Right.
weapon skill for one turn. So if you use
Which,
that,
what do they
you're
care
re
about their weapon skill? Let's be honest.
well, that's the Karen do, but
Yeah.
you can ignore that with the marshals.
Yeah. Because.
So if you do that one turn, and then another turn you can use the Canticle that lets you reroll an additional hit, wound, and damage roll. So then you're rerolling 2 hits, which 6 shots, 2/3. You're expecting 4 hits and
Yep.
2 that you'd like to reroll. So statistically, with Mars, when you're running 3, you're kind of rerolling all your hits. So it's still pretty reliable.
Yeah.
Um,
I know. I know that when I go into AdMech, when a raider blows one of these things up, it makes me very happy. Because I'm
yeah,
like, that 85-point model or 95-point model just did its job.
well, they're 75-point model.
No, the raider.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, they're different animals.
Yeah.
But
Um,
the lab chickens can pump out so much
yeah.
reliable at a range, right? Because
Right.
that's really the only anti-tank gun I have in this whole list.
Yeah.
And if you took those out, I could still probably kill tanks by plinking them to death with the Rangers and Wrath of Mars and stuff. But those things just line up on something, shoot, and that thing's not a thing
Yeah.
anymore. Um,
No, I mean,
and
especially when you go into something like uh, uh, big Slanesh demons,
yeah, yeah,
right?
the super secret.
Right, or bloodthirsters, or anything where they have a 5 invuln with a
hmm
ton of wounds, and you're relying on that toughness and that you know.
Yeah. These guys will come in and they're just, I mean, the 3 plus D3 damage means they're averaging 5 damage a pop. when you're in the Canticle, you can re-roll. You get 1 free damage re-roll. So any 4 is probably going to be a
A 5.
re-roll to a 5 or 6.
Yep.
And
They
they just
hurt.
blow apart.
They
Yeah.
hurt. But for 450 points, they better hurt.
Yeah.
They better hurt.
Well, but I mean,
I feel like they're well priced without core. I really do.
in Mars they feel a little strong still. I think the ones that don't come with rerolls and stuff, yeah, they're probably getting closer to fair. They certainly needed to lose the core reroll. I'll say that, because they were just obscenely durable. And the rerolls that the Skitarii Marshals were throwing on them was just weren't fair.
I can tell you,
it's kind of a shame. The taser variant, the melee ones, got caught up in the debuff. I kind of wish those guys still had core, not just because you're not really seeing them anyway. So it'd be maybe make them a little better. But
yeah, I can tell you as a Drukhari player, when I got my codex and saw that Ravagers didn't have core, it made me a sad man.
Yeah,
it made me a sad man.
So I think you're going to see a lot less of them on tables, except in Mars, because Mars has the built-in rerolls that makes them still really good.
But I think the direction that Ninth is headed in removes core from the majority of vehicles, if not all vehicles.
I kind of wish there's a way for AdMech. Like, so AdMech, the Tech Priest Engine Seer can bless a machine, and it turns its ballistic skill into a 2-up. I really wish instead he would just give one vehicle core. I don't know, I think that would have been a neat ability. And then you might see some Doom Crawlers, Scorpius, and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But whatever.
Yeah. Can't have it all, right?
Yeah.
Can't have it all. All right. So moving forward, still in fast attack, we have
Traxi Stable Paralyzers.
Another word that you're gonna try to make me read, and it's just not gonna happen. So yeah, what do these guys do?
These are the wing guys with the flamethrowers and the big claws, and they're there for a couple of reasons. One, they put out a lot of shots, so they're another good Wrath of Mars candidate. They can disappear and come back. So if you need them to, late game,
another good Scramblers or Octarius or
and they're really neat because they're like one of the only units that disappears at the end of your turn. So what you can do is fling them way far forward, put them in harm's way, shoot their flamethrowers. You can even charge with them, fight, and then if you don't like how everything worked out or where they are, they just peace out and jump to safety. So that's a neat unit. You can them and all 3 of my fast attack units would be my While We Stand We Fight.
Okay.
So they're a neat unit because they can leave and come back later. That helps keep them really safe.
Is that a once per game, or can you do that more often?
Just 1 CP.
Okay. So you can do that every turn.
They can't do it the turn they come back. And originally they could, and people were bringing them to come in, Wrath of Mars, and then deuce out, or come in, deploy Scramblers, and then get out every turn, and there's nothing you can do about it.
Yeah, no counterplay to that.
That was pretty clearly going to get fact, so I'm glad they fact that.
Yeah.
So I didn't feel pressure to run it. But yeah, now they're just kind of like they're like another Sikaran unit that you can. They're a melee threat. They shoot pretty hard. They're fast. You can get them wherever you need them to go, and they're just another good unit.
Yeah. So then the last thing you have in this list is a fuselage.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, the bomber. I love this thing.
I hate this thing.
It is so good at everything, and it's 130 points, but it can really get just about anywhere it needs to get. It dishes out mortal wounds in the movement phase, and actually I found it's really good against Drukhari because like you can kind of fly it around behind them, and then when you blow up those raiders and the witches jump out, it has enough stubber shots just to pick up the whole unit.
Yep.
It helps you get engaged on all fronts. I really like it because you can park it kind of right where your opponent needs to be. It has a huge footprint, and then for 1 CP, you can auto-destruct it if they kill it. You can make it blow up, and it just basically smites everything in their army. Um, it's just a great, great unit.
Yeah, I've run into these over and over again throughout
Mm-hmm.
tournaments. Even in, before the new codex, I ran into them.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
they've never been not annoying, ever.
Yeah. They just get a lot of bombs, and even with the new codex, they're twice as effective against a single vehicle. They throw 6 dice, so they average 3 mortals, and they can easily spike to more than that on
Yep.
any vehicle or monster.
I can tell
Um,
you, as a Drukhari player who has a bomber, that's nowhere near as good as this bomber.
well, the Void Raven's cool.
It's just
It's
different.
also expensive.
Yeah, it's different, right? You
Yeah,
get one bomb. I wish I got more than one bomb. That's really where my sticking point is. I was like,
yeah,
that, requiring
but it is.
that 4-up for that bomb to go off. It's like, ugh.
Yeah, that can be. Yeah, you can feel bad
Yeah,
sometimes for that. I understand. Um, but yeah, and then it can have the move, advance, and charge for any non-flyer that it flies over for 1 CP.
yeah,
So that's just a great, you know,
annoying
oh,
ability.
you're a melee marine army. Well, like that unit of Blade Garbets,
Right,
they're gonna chill out for a turn.
right. The things that were already slow and needed to get into combat are now
I'm just
more slow.
gonna take another turn of shooting at that thing
Right,
before it reaches me. So that's actually really good against like demons and stuff. Right? Because like a Keeper of Secrets doesn't fly.
right.
So you just have its move, advance, and charge. So even like a 6-inch charge, they have to roll 12 to make it. Like they're not making a 6-inch
No.
charge. So
Yeah, and especially when you're running up again. I mean, so with faster armies, having it isn't as bad, but
hmm
it's still bad.
well, I mean, so you have their movement,
Right,
and then like say you do it to like Drakari to like witches or something,
right.
right? Their movement drops from what is it,
Yeah,
8 to 4. Their advance now they're getting like 2 or 3 maybe on it
yep.
at best, and then their charge is like it better be a 3-inch charge or they're not making it.
Right, you got to be pretty close to start with.
So they already have to be at point blank range
Right.
for that to be useful at all.
And if they're
So
already at point blank range, then they didn't make it through that turn anyway.
yeah, so, yeah. So I mean, if they're already at point blank range, why am I having their movement?
Yeah,
So
you're basically just
yeah,
taking something out of the next turn.
yeah. Basically, what that bomber does is it puts whatever unit you use it in timeout,
Yeah,
and then like that melee unit is just not moving.
right.
And it's only 1 CP.
It's encouragement to remove the bomber. That's what it is.
Yeah, yeah, it really is.
It's a
Um,
1 CP strat that encourages your opponent to kill that bomber, and then 1
but if
CP
they're
strat to explode inside their army.
yeah, but if they're killing the bomber, they're not killing my chickens, or they're not killing like that. AdMech has so many pieces, and it's all not one unit here is essential.
Right. Which is that's very much how a lot of the more fragile armies are, right? That's how
Mhm.
Drukhari is. Back when Gene Stealer Cult was a thing, that's how Gene Stealer Cult was. It didn't matter what you picked up this turn because
Yeah,
nothing in my army is my pivot point. I I
yeah.
can I I can find a way to win with any of these units,
hmm
which is
And
one of the
AdMech really feel the same way, except they're also great at shooting and can be surprisingly resilient when you want them to be.
right, which I think that's one of the hallmarks of a really really strong not just codex but list. When you're
hmm
building a list and you go, okay, if I lose this turn one, can I still win or compete in this game? And the answer is yes. And then
Yeah,
you go, well, if I lose this on turn one, can I still compete in this game? Yes. And when you can do that with your army, you know you have something,
hmm
right?
yeah, yeah. You're
So,
never gonna be out of it turn
no.
one from a strike. I mean, conceivably, someone could come in and just wipe 3 units of Scutari, and then you're in a lot of trouble. But
Yeah,
I haven't seen that happen yet. You'd have to be on Planet Bowling Bowl or something.
yeah. Something like that.
Yeah.
It definitely didn't happen in my game against that mech. I made
Yeah.
a turn one charge with my entire army, so it helps.
Yeah, that'll give them
It helps to
bad.
move fast.
Yeah.
Right.
But I mean, even still, like they could layer a couple buffs and minimize the at least keep you
Right.
from bleeding them too badly.
Right.
I knew that was coming.
But if you can knock those units down to half,
Yeah, they
or
lose a lot of effectiveness.
right, you start tilting the game towards your
Hmm.
favor if you can put a big dent in a lot of the units. But in order to do it with a lot of the units, you need half to three quarters of your army to get there.
Yeah, yeah, that's really I think the best way to cripple this army is if you can like cut down both the Ranger squads and then knock out the two the Sikaran infiltrator and the Taraxi. All of a sudden, I don't really have a great Wrath of Mars unit.
Right.
So that that's six mortals a turn that I was hoping to give to you that you just knocked out.
But that's not exactly an easy task to do.
No, that's not easy at all,
Right.
especially because I hide a lot of them.
Right.
Um,
Although it does, one thing that it does sound like is that because of how many moving pieces you have in this army and how many overlapping abilities you have in this army and how much, you know, when we talk about it, it's like, okay, this is how much can go right, right? We're looking
mhm.
at it in that perspective. But there's also well, if I put these buffs on the wrong guys, if I pick the wrong buffs, if, there's a lot of things you can do wrong with this army.
Yeah, AdMech is takes a lot of practice, I think, to really optimize it and to feel like you're really utilizing it at its maximum potential.
Right.
Uh, it's easy to like, oh, well, I really want to shoot, so I'm gonna up my ballistic skill and use my shooty canticle. But then like you don't have either of those again for the
Right.
rest of the game.
Then,
Uh,
right, you don't want to blow your whole load right away.
yeah, and so not to say there aren't games where you do want to do that,
Right.
right? If you think like I can break your back this turn with that, that's the right thing. But you kind of have to have a really good feel for the army and for what it does and for um, how the buffs all interact and stuff and what your opponent might be able to kill this turn to
Right.
know what's the right thing to use at the right time. And
Right.
it's definitely it's taken me a lot of practice since the codex came out. Um,
Well, and this is one thing I noticed in a couple of my games, right? And that's the over dedication of units is very detrimental to fragile armies, right? So, like if I dedicate 2 units of incubi to something, it better
mhm.
require 2 units of incubi.
Because then they're out and just sitting there with their yeah,
Right, because then they're dead, right?
and yeah,
So,
absolutely.
or if I throw witches out, it better they better need to be there.
Hmm.
If you're using one-time buffs, you better need those buffs.
Yeah. So if for instance, if I was another army playing AdMech and I wanted to get into melee on first turn and they dropped a bunch of buffs to preclude that, maybe hide and try and play gamey the first turn and wait for those buffs to wear off and then come at them the next turn.
Buy yourself
Um,
a turn. I mean,
yeah.
there's almost always ways to buy a turn.
Hmm.
Buying two
Yeah.
turns is a lot harder, but buying a single turn,
Hmm.
you
If
can
if
generally do.
the AdMech players dropped all their buffs in one turn, just hide them out maybe.
Yeah.
Um, and similarly, a lot of the AMIC buffs, come with a pretty heavy cost, right? So if I buff my movement, it degrades my armor across the board. Everybody's armor save gets one worse,
Right.
which can really make you a lot squishier.
Right.
So being AMIC, you have to know when you need to use those. Typically, I use the movement one only with if it's for like the killing blow,
Right.
or if I absolutely have to for some reason, or if it's late game, I'm trying to grab some objectives or something.
Yeah. So,
But
yeah, it's something you have to keep in your head is what is my opponent's capabilities this turn. If I'm gonna
yeah,
pick, if I'm gonna pick plus movement and drop my save, I need to know that my opponent can't reach. what I
Yeah,
need hidden.
can they reach it, or do I care if they kill it?
Right.
There's a lot of times I'm like, whatever, you can have that unit.
Right.
I need to go do this other stuff. Um, but yeah, it's you can really shoot yourself in the foot sometimes.
Yep.
Especially like you take the shooty buff and then like your Sakarans get stuck in somewhere and they're like, okay, I just gave my unit -1 to hit.
Yeah.
And the rest of my army, but like these guys, I can't give them the broad spectrum data tether, so I can't ignore the penalty. And they're forward deployed, so they're far away from everybody. Like, okay, great.
Yep.
So you need to kind of make sure you're not hurting yourself as much as you're helping yourself.
Right. So, what's the future of AdMech? Where are we going from here? With Grey Knights coming out, do you see any change in what you're taking to kind of balance yourself against them and the Thousand Suns that I believe are coming as well? If I'm
Yeah,
not wrong.
so Grey Knights and Thousand Suns are both gonna probably drop a lot of mortals. That's probably a good sign for Mars AdMech wise because they have a 5-up field no pain at least that they can take for a Canticle
All right.
against mortal wounds. So that'll help. So I think that's probably just going to push more people from Lucius into Mars. Um, I'm not. I feel like AdMech's probably going to be able to outshoot anything that shows up, but the Thousand Suns mortal wound output could be really debilitating for
Yeah.
AdMech, and they they have no psychic defense really.
Right.
So that's bad news.
Yeah. I mean, with that on the horizon, I've been looking at the Drukhari counter psyker abilities, and I'm
Mhm.
like, this is just gonna hurt. That's all this
Yeah,
is.
yeah. I think AdMech's just gonna have to take it and hope that they have enough wounds, ablative wounds. Like, okay, yeah, you did 10 mortal wounds. Well, good thing I have a 20-man Scutari squad. They'll just
Yep.
soak it up, and then I'll try and shoot you off the table.
Yep.
Um, at least warp time can't be used on Magnus anymore. So that might help.
Yeah.
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 So
They're gonna hurt.
I don't know. Yeah, I'm a little worried about the mortal wound output from a Thousand Suns in particular. I think Admech will probably shoot Grey Knights pretty well. Um, I think multiple strike squads getting in and being able to charge you out of deep strike might be a problem
Yeah. Good.
potentially.
They have several
Um,
ways to get across the table too, so
yeah,
it's not like it's
so
just one.
yeah, so if Grey Knights are engaging you across the table in multiple locations, they might be able to really stress your fallback and shoots and that kind of stuff, and kind of tap you out. And then once you start getting stuck in melee, you're gonna start dying. So maybe them. I'm more worried about Thousand Suns though, I think.
Okay.
Um,
Um, let's see what else. What else did I want to bug you about? Let's see. Uh, oh, your list. After this tournament, you
yeah.
saw how everything performed. You said you tweaked it a little bit from last tournament. What's the next tweaks that are coming up, or are you not going to tell
I
us?
hadn't really thought about it. I've been toying with maybe doing something else with the Taraxi. I like them a lot. I think they're really powerful. But I ended up using up a lot of CP on my other units and then didn't want to spend the CP to make them run away.
Right.
So I thought maybe Cerberus Raiders could fit there too, and that would save me some points that I could put elsewhere in the army. Um, but then another part of me is like the Traxi really kick butt, so I don't know. Um, that's a unit that maybe you could cut because they're 19 points a model and they're kind of squishy. Um, could cut them potentially, especially if there's like a problem that needs solving, like Thousand Suns.
Yeah.
That could maybe be a point you could get some points out of. I don't know what Admech could possibly take to make Thousand Suns less problematic for him, or orcs. I think orcs could potentially be a big problem for Admech.
Probably just more bodies.
Well, more the out of line of sight shooty squig buggy thing.
No.
Uh, that could be bad
Yeah.
for for Admech, especially because blast weapons will just blow apart those Skitarii squads.
Yeah. So, God, I had another question for you, and you're giving me so much on the responses to questions that I'm forgetting what my questions are. which is fantastic, I might add. Uh, oh, so while you were any key moments in this tournament that really stood out to you, positive or negative, that you
Yeah,
wanted to
well,
throw out?
I mean, I went 5-0, so I'm gonna call them overwhelmingly positive. I got the breaks. You don't go 5-0 without getting a couple breaks that you
Yep.
needed. Um, so first turn or the first game, um, I kind of like I had a Sikaran infiltrator squad that got charged by like a succubus and a bunch of hellions. And like oh man, this could get ugly. It was a turn one Drakari, using that Animus Vitae or whatever
Yep.
to get the turn one charge. It's like, oh boy, here we go. And they had the +1 save and the -1 hit buff, and they just turned off the succubus first, with their Tempercopia. The Hellion swung into basically nothing to them, and then they fought back and just obliterated that entire front. I was like, all right, this is gonna be a good game.
That
That was,
well, that went well.
yeah, yeah, because they're, I mean, they're only T3, so they're
Right.
definitely a unit that they could have just
Yep.
gotten wiped out. But when the Hellions kind of whiffed, like, all right, here we go. And then in my third game, I think I played Matt's Eldari. And he's just a great player, and he was just blowing apart my Skitarii blobs and dooming stuff and killing stuff. And then my Sikaran Rust Stalkers were hiding in that center, just like I explained with all the buffs on top of them, so you
Yep.
couldn't kill them. And then they sprinted out and charged and just wiped out a bunch of Farseers that he had hiding. That was pretty cool. And then also in that same game, he killed a bomber that blew up and took his Farseer down with it. And
That always
those were
feels
probably
good.
the, those were probably the two turning points of that game.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, definitely caught some breaks that game. Um,
Yeah, he's a good player.
yeah, he's
Uh,
excellent.
yeah. Well, thank you for coming on.
Yeah, my pleasure, man. Thanks. This was
Congratul
fun.
Congratulations on your GT win,
Thank
and
you.
we'll see you next time.
All right. Have a good one.
You too.